Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, welcome back to this episode. We have a great question today from a viewer just like you, and they're trying to decide, hey, should I retire at 61 or 62, and what is the big impact between the two ages? So we're gonna jump right into that. If you're on the YouTube channel, I'm actually gonna share my screen. I'm gonna walk through what I'm showing as best I can. So on the podcast, you should be able to get a gist of it as well, but feel free to check out the video if you are interested. So again, my name is Dallin, but most of you probably know that. It is great to spend some time with you. I'm a financial planner helping federal employees retire comfortable and confident. So let's dive right in. So I'm gonna read the question here first. So this federal employee says, I am a federal employee with 36 years of credible service and have significant savings in the TSP. I will turn 61 this year and my husband wants me to retire soon. However, if I wait until I reach 62 years of age, about a year from now, my annuity will be that 1% more than if I retire now. My question is, how can I assess the financial impacts of retiring at 61 versus waiting a year when I will be 62? Also, does having a significant TSP balance factor into the equation at all? So this is a great question, and a question I get all the time in some form. So the biggest difference, and what I'm sharing here on my screen, is the pension. Now there's going to be other differences as well, but when you're 61 and it's only a year extra, probably the biggest difference you're going to see is in your pension. Now for those that don't know, as long as you have 20 years of service and you retire at 62 or later, then you can get a 10% bump to your pension. So that's what the federal employee is referring to when they can kind of get a bump by making it to 62. But let's look at, okay, what does the financial impacts actually look like of this difference? So let's run, this federal employee says they got 36 years of service. So let's assume 36 years. Let's assume, a high 3. If someone's been with the government 36 years, their salary has probably grown. Let's say their salary is $130,000. Obviously, a lot of federal employees get paid less. Some federal employees get paid more. But let's say you use $130,000 as their high 3, right? And of course, if they retire at 61, then their multiplier is just 1%. So their gross pension every year on an annual basis is $46,000 or $46,800, right? But let's make that one change. Let's say she works 1 year longer. So now she has 37 years of service, and her multiplier is now 1.1%, right? So what does that change? Well, her gross pension jumps up to $52,900. So what's the difference? On an annual basis, that's $6,000. So as we can see, by her working that extra year from 61 to 62, of course her multiplier pops up, and that's why her pension jumps by a significant sum, where it's a difference of about $6,000 per year for working that extra year. So that is a good amount of money. Now, it's not a vast sum that someone can never say no to, right? In some circumstances, when people can easily afford to retire, they just want to be done. So it's not worth it to work the extra year, but it's something to consider, because once you make it to 62 in 20 years, well, every additional year you work longer, well, your pension increases, just not by a ton. So for example, let's say she makes this a 62, but ends up wanting to work another year. Well, what is that going to do to her pension? We know from 61 to 62, it increases it by about $6,000, but what does one extra year do? So one extra year, let's add that. Well, that only adds about $1,500 to her pension compared to 62. So from working from 62 to 63, it adds only about $1,500 to your pension. So that's why working from 61 to 62 makes a big difference relatively. But again, it depends on what your finances are. If you can easily afford to retire, then hey, you don't have to work till 62, right? Are there lots of perks for doing so? Of course, right? There's always more money for working longer. You can put more in your TSP. You can do lots of things like that. But at some point, enough is enough. And you just have to decide for you, what point is that? And then pull the plug, be done. Retire and enjoy the hard work that you have put in over the years. Now, there's some other considerations as well. So obviously the situation, I simplified it significantly, right? I didn't change the high 3, which the high 3 would increase the longer you work, because there's pay raises, there's things like that. For every year longer you work, of course, your TSP is going to grow more. You're going to be able to put more in, so that certainly makes a difference. When it comes to Social Security, generally the more years you add at the end of your career when you're earning high dollar amounts, the higher your Social Security is going to be. But again, one extra year is really going to make a very small difference for Social Security, but it's worth mentioning if you have vast, many years that you retire early. Next is the first supplement. Now, this is actually kind of on the other side of the spectrum, where if you retire before 62 and you retire with an immediate retirement, you can get the first supplement. So if she ends up retiring at 61 until 62, she can receive the first supplement from 61 to 62. So if I had to guess, that's probably worth, I don't know, $1,000 a month net for her. So that's about $12,000 she'd probably be able to get by retiring at 61. And she'd get that from 61 to 62. So that's actually something to consider as well, is sometimes the benefit of her for retiring before 62. It really depends on what you're trying to do, right? And of course, the last thing is living life. What are your goals? When do you want to be done working, right? That's a huge, huge factor. Of course, you want to make sure your money matches those goals, but what's your goals? Do you like your job? Do you like what you're doing? And if it's easy to make it to 62 and it works for your goals, awesome, do it. There's a huge, bump in your pension, which is really nice to have down the road. But at the end of the day, if the money makes sense even without it, hey, you don't have to suffer, right? Just to get this bump, which of course, like we saw, you saw the difference. And of course, if your salary and your years of service are different, your numbers are gonna look a little different, but hopefully this acts as a good example to give you a gist of how this works. So I hope that was helpful. Have an incredible rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.